Hello there. Today we're going to talk about getting the best home theater subwoofer at every price point. Now, right off the bat, if all you want to do is grab a subwoofer for the X number of dollars you want to spend, all you need to do is scroll down to the video description, check the price, model, and link there, and be on your merry way. All that I ask is if you do that and you don't want to watch the whole video, just leave a like on the video and ideally play the whole thing through. But, if you can't just leave it, played through in the background, just, put a like, subscribe, anything to help me out really. So yeah, let's just dive into it. So if you want to watch the whole video, I'll go through each price point, starting ultra low at the $150 range, and then moving all the way up to multiple thousands of dollars, really, infinite if you really want to. So yeah, just keep that in mind. And the other thing that you need to understand is that realistically, for proper home theater performance, you don't want to pick a subwoofer based on, you have X number of dollars to spend, therefore just get a subwoofer that's X number of dollars. You want to get a subwoofer based on the size of your room. That means not the square footage, but the volume of your room, as in cubic footage. A lot of people, kind of neglect that. Like they're like, oh yeah, I have a 300 square foot room. What kind of subwoofer do I need to fill that space? Well, is it a 300 square foot room with like 8-foot ceilings, or is it a 300 square foot room with like, 15-foot vaulted cathedral ceilings? Because that's a very, very different ask there. So, first thing you should do, like literally first thing you should do when looking at a subwoofer is measure your room. Get the length, the width, the height, multiply that out, get the cubic footage. Honestly, it doesn't even need to be super exact. If you get within 500 cubic feet of what the right answer is, that's good enough. Like, there's not going to be a difference between like a 2,900 cubic foot room and a 3,000 cubic foot room. Just call them both 3,000 cubic feet. It's fine. And when in doubt, round up to the nearest 500. So work in increments of 2,000 cubic feet, 2,500, 3,000, 3,500, and so on. So, understanding that, I'll go into much more in depth in another video on how to pick a subwoofer. This is just a video on what subwoofers are best at each price point. So, if you're going to come at me with a question like, hey, I really love this SVS subwoofer, but, is there a better one at, a given price point? Then, just consult this video and you'll see that like, oh, for $600, I should get this instead of this. So that's really about it. So first things first, the reason I started on this page, I said I'll start at $150. This one clearly is $450 from RSL. The issue is, I will get into, ultra budget subwoofers in a moment, but really speaking, for the best long-term investment, unless you're finding like a sweetheart deal on the used market, which would be my real suggestion for subwoofers under $400, everything that you buy under this price point, unfortunately, is disposable. So like when you walk into, a Costco or a Best Buy and you see a $200 Klipsch subwoofer, I'm sorry, but that stuff isn't going to give you a real home theater experience. Those things, they roll off at 40, maybe 35 hertz. They don't really have any meaningful output at 20 hertz. And you don't really get that real punch, the chest slam. They just don't have enough output. They're underpowered. They're small. Even if they look like they're big, like big old 15-inch drivers in them or something, if they're under this price point, I mean, I've looked extensively. Like it's honestly just not worth it. You'll end up regretting it in like another 6 months or a year. You might double down on your mistake and buy two, or you might do the smart thing and get rid of it and just get like a single competent subwoofer or two competent subwoofers. But realistically, I really discourage you from going below this $450 price point. And if you do, really check the used market. So my top recommendation, if you're going below $450, is go on Craigslist, go on Facebook Marketplace. Sometimes even Goodwill or pawn shops have, good finds there. But look for old SVS subwoofers, look for old Shu subwoofers, HSU, Shu Research. Those two brands, at least in my area and in the North American Northeast, it's pretty easy to find older used SVS subwoofers or Sue subwoofers, Sue, whatever you pronounce it as, relatively affordably. So that would be the best option. But if we're starting all the way at the ultra budget price point for $155, this would be my recommendation. The Dayton sub 100 or sub 1000, sorry, meaning the 10-inch driver. That's why it's 1000. They can see for like $30 more. They have the 12-inch driver. Oh, sorry, didn't mean to jump forward to that. Really, the reason I'm recommending this is because of its price and size. Spending a bit more on the 12-inch, yeah, you're spending more just for the sake of spending more. It has like a tiny bit more output in it, just a tiny bit deeper. But honestly, That's not the thing that's going to make or break you. Like if you're literally like, looking for something dirt cheap, and I mean, quite frankly, the majority of that $155, it says free shipping, but like most of that money is going toward the packaging and shipping of this item. When the price point is this low for something this large and relatively heavy, this goes for any product, not just subwoofers. Like people look at free shipping and they assume that it's free. It's not. Like you're paying for it in the price of the product. Like this $155 subwoofer, there's like $30-$40 worth of like actual stuff in there. The rest is all just like the packaging, the shipping, the distribution, the manufacturer margin, the retailer margin, the padding in there for like customer support and returns and all that. Like there's just not any budget left for like a proper driver, proper cabinet. And of the $155 options, as I said, this is the best price point, this best subwoofer at every price point. So like this is the one I choose at the $155 price point, but this is kind of like, the least bad option. And I know that I'm not selling it well here, but that's just kind of the reality of the situation. If it's a choice between this $155 brand new Dayton subwoofer, and that's not to say that Dayton doesn't make great products. They actually make excellent subwoofer drivers in the higher price points. But, if it's a choice between this and a used $150 SVS subwoofer, I'm taking the used subwoofer every day of the week, okay? So that's just what it is. And same deal in the price point above that. Like once you go into like, you're willing to spend about $200 to $250, this Jamo subwoofer is actually going to be like, a little bit better than, some of the like typical best, as I mentioned before, like, that $200 clipped subwoofer that you see at Best Buy and that you see at Costco. Like this is a little bit better than that. I mean, again, like this is kind of picking and choosing, but this is really just, an opinion and experience I formed off of like, me hearing and working with this in person, as well as like some of the reviews I've seen, specifically Aaron's Audio Corner, Aaron Hardinson, excellent speaker, subwoofer reviewer. He's more on the speaker side, but he has done a few subwoofer reviews. Like in this, like, this is still what I'd consider budget, verging on ultra budget territory. The Dayton is really ultra budget, but this is like really in amongst budget subwoofers, this is like the least bad option. Again, I know that this is not ideal, but it's what it is. Again, this is something where like $250, if you can find like, a used subwoofer from a reputable brand, that would be a bit better. So once you get up to $300, again, this is like below my magic $450 price point. This is actually getting into something pretty decent here. Like, Monoprice, they're a direct to consumer, internet direct company. So they're giving you a lot more value for their price point. This is still not one of like Monoprice's like home theater related products. They're monolith subwoofers, which actually do meet like some pretty heavy high tier home theater standards. This is more of the, still more budget minded, still more like, consumer and, but, people working on a tight budget here. But like, just from raw driver size, like this isn't a very good 15-inch driver, but it's big. And that works for you and it works against you. On the one hand, it works for you because like, even though the magnet in there is not super powerful, the motor structure, the spider, all that stuff, it's still going to displace a good amount of air. And then it has a lot of power behind it, like a 600 watt amplifier. It has a decent amount of output. James Larson, he reviewed this, had pretty decent output numbers. Honestly, like most room correction softwares, because like the subwoofer has like a really peaky 50 hertz output and then like drops off pretty rapidly below around 40 hertz, your room correction is going to like automatically correct it to roll off at around 30-35 hertz. Still not ideal, but it's better than nothing for sure. And again, like $300 price point, this is where you're getting so close to like proper subwoofers that I really can't in good conscience tell people that this is a good use of their money. Like they should really just like be like waiting another month, saving up that extra $150 and then going up into the next tier. All right, so moving forward, so this is actually where real home theater subwoofers begin, in my opinion. So this is, the RSL Speedwoofer 10S. RSL, they're another internet direct company similar to Monoprice, although I would say that, they have a much longer pedigree in acoustics than Monoprice Monolith does. They make excellent speakers, excellent subwoofers for their given price point that are really based in really sound fundamental acoustics research, as well as, listening tests, understanding tonality, but like, they're great objective and subjective performers. And in this price point, ever since, SVS used to dominate these price points, these like $300, $400, $500 subwoofers. But that was like 10, 15 years ago. Ever since SVS moved more toward a dealer and retailer model, and kind of like seeded the internet direct bang for the buck category, that's kind of left an opening in the market. There's no longer an SVS PB1000 non-pro model for sale, which used to be $400 to $500. This has really picked up the slack. RSL in the last couple of years, their Speedwoofer 10S, they're now on the Mark II model rather than the Mark I. Really an excellent subwoofer for the price. Like, they're talking about having extension down to 22 hertz. If you're putting this in like a smaller room, like I'd say below 1500 cubic feet, again, I'm using cubic footage here, but you can, roughly estimate that to be like 150, square foot to almost 200 square foot room. If you get like two of these and stick them on either end of the room, you have like a pretty good performance down to, as it says, 22 hertz here, but you can get some room gain and definitely like push that out a little bit to about 20 hertz if you're willing to give up some of that peak output in like the 40, 50 hertz range. Again, some of this will have to do with how you tune stuff in your AVR. And this gets me on another topic here. I just mentioned getting two of these and putting these on opposite sides of the room. A lot of people will be tempted to do this at lower price points, as I said, like going down, like, you find a $200 subwoofer at, Best Buy or Costco, and you're like, great, I have $400 to spend. I see that subwoofer is $200. Let me get two of them. I see people do dual subwoofers online all the time. This would be fantastic. I got dual subwoofers. I'm done. I got a ton of horsepower. It's like, no, that's unfortunately not how it works. It's not that easy. Almost always, you will be better off. I've seen this happen dozens, if not hundreds of times. You will be better off getting the single biggest, best subwoofer you can at your given budget at this time, and then buying a second one of those down the line, whether it's 3 months from now, 6 months from now, whenever you save up, and whenever it makes sense to you, get a second matching one down the line. That, like, I'll go into this in more detail in a second video where I talk about how to decide which subwoofers to get for your room. But really, unless you have a very, very small room or a budget that's larger than, I'd say, $1,500, trying to buy two subwoofers on a smaller budget for a medium to larger size room is not a winning strategy. It almost always doesn't end up working out for you in the long term. You're better off just getting a single good subwoofer, save up, and then buy a second matching one. So if your budget is $450, get one of these. If your budget is $900, don't. You can get one of the ones further down in the video. All right, so in honorable mention, actually, in this sort of $400 to $500 price range, as I mentioned, SVS, they have like kind of ceded the ultra budget territory to a lot of other companies, and also even really the mid-range. They're still, don't get me wrong, they're still an excellent value actually compared to a lot of speaker companies. SVS, their speakers and subs are incredible value still. It's just that if you're putting them up against, like, this video is the best subwoofer at every price point, SVS is generally, 20 to 30% more price-wise than the best option. The best option is what I define as, subwoofer with, the best amount of output while staying within reasonable design constraints, like, its distortion limits, its group delay, transient response, even to a degree its size. Like, if you have a massive subwoofer that isn't doing much, then it's not necessarily best. So SVS is still an excellent option, just not necessarily the best option at the price point. But, as you can see here, we have their outlet sales, and SVS right now, their outlet options aren't super compelling. You have this 10-inch, a 12-inch sealed sub here for $500. Their sales get a lot more aggressive during major holidays. So SVS, they have, I think, 5 annual major sales a year. And they usually start the week before the actual holiday. So the 5 sales, I believe, are President's Day, President's Day, Memorial Day, 4th of July, Labor Day, and Black Friday. And each of those sales usually start 5 to 7 days before the actual date of the holiday. So, check in, a week before President's Day, and you might see the sale just about starting. And when that happens, like this SVS SB-1000 drops to, $350, maybe $400 versus like $500 to $600. So that's a nice way to save a chunk of change there. Just honorable mention in that like $400 to $500 range. SVS, like if you can snap up a SB-1000 or PB-1000 at that price point, that would be fantastic. So going up in price point from there, we have another company that I mentioned before briefly, Sue Research. Again, like I believe the correct pronunciation is Sue. It's named after the founder, Dr. Sue, and I believe the H is silent there. But if you want to just call it HSU Research, it's just easier for me to tell people, because like when they Google it and they try to Google Sue as an SUE, they'll get the wrong result. So it's HSU Research, pronounced Sue. So this is their lowest end ported subwoofer, the VTF, standing for variable tuning frequency, the VTF2 Mark V. The price is it's $660. This is a bit, I don't want to say misleading, but like it's a bit confusing, because that's the price. But then Sue Research, they don't include the shipping in the price, whereas most of these other options, whether it's SVS or RSL or most other people, they roll the shipping cost into the price these days, and they call it the total price of the subwoofer plus quote unquote free shipping. Whereas for Sue Research, shipping is always an extra $90. So this $660 subwoofer becomes $750. So you can see, like, unfortunately, we did make a big price jump here from $450 all the way to $750. Unfortunately, for the time being, I'm not seeing very many compelling offers between these two price points, and that is a bit unfortunate, but it is what it is. Sometimes you can find a Monolith or a Klipsch RP subwoofer in this price range, but not always. Really the next significant price point is this Sue Research VTF2 MKII. And this is really good for, if you're in that like 2,500 cubic foot region. Getting one of these subwoofers and then getting a second one down the road would be ideal. Actually, once you have two, these are good for even like a 3,300 square foot room. Sorry, cubic foot room, 3,300 cubic feet. This would be fantastic for that. And in the next tier above this is only $50 more. This is the RSL Speedwoofer 12S. This is bigger, badder, and better than the Sue subwoofer in every respect, really. The only reason that I didn't include this, like, honestly, this is a better deal considering it's only $50 more, but it's like better in every regard. The only thing that gives me hesitation about the subwoofer is that it says it's a 12-inch driver, which is absolutely true. Like, this driver diameter is 12 inches. The issue is, look at the surrounding area of it. This is a massive body. This is big for a 12-inch ported subwoofer, and not everyone wants a subwoofer this big in this room. Like, this is a subwoofer that if you put two of them in a room, that's good for, really a 4,000 cubic foot room. One of them is good enough for a 3,000 cubic foot room. And as I said, like, you're going to want two subwoofers in a room, period. Far more capable subwoofer, but it's a big boy. Honestly, it's actually not all that smaller. It's almost the same size as this next option here, which is the next tier up for Sue with a VTF3 Mark V. So again, like the fifth generation, this again $1,000, but it's a add an extra $90. You're talking about $1,090, almost $1,100. You can call this an $1,100 subwoofer, really. And in that respect, for $300 cheaper, this RSL option, little bit smaller, little bit less performance, but it's $300 cheaper. So this is actually the value king compared to these two subwoofers, these two Sue subwoofers. Sorry, I just closed that out. But unfortunately, the one drawback is the potential size. So just double check the dimensions, see if you can fit two of these in here. If you can, this is hands down the best subwoofer in that 800. Really, everything between $700 and $1,000, this is the best option. Like, those two are HSU subwoofers. They're fantastic for their size. For their price point, they are just very slightly behind these. But keep in mind, both these options, RSL and Sue, they are going to be way ahead in the price to performance category than pretty much everything else in the industry. Like, you're in the top, it's better than 99% of the other options out there, what you're getting for the given price point. So this is more of an honorable mention. These are Rythmik subwoofers. We have two of their 12-inch options here, and then we have a 15-inch here. And the thing with these is Rythmik, they have a very unique technology. Not unique, I guess a bit more uncommon, the direct drive servo technology. So This allows them to be a lot more precise, a lot more accurate. Like, this is kind of like an audiophile subwoofer. What this really translates to in a more objective sense is like better transient response, better time domain group delay performance. These are all like metrics that, people like James Larson and Matthew Post, they go kind of back and forth. They don't want you to take it too conclusively because the research is still a bit out there on this, a bit inconclusive, but those are characteristics that are typically associated with what people would describe as musicality. So the fact that these subwoofers are a lot more quote unquote tighter and accurate. So these are great subwoofers if you really care about music and home theater. You do pay for it though. You can see this is a $700 subwoofer, and this is actually going to be lower performance from a pure output perspective than this SU subwoofer right here. It's a little bit behind in output, but it has as I mentioned, like the tighter, cleaner bass response. Same thing with this other 12-inch. It's now you're getting into $1,050. This is absolutely output wise a step behind the RSL Speedwoofer 12S in terms of just pure output. But if you want that servo direct drive technology, and that like better, quicker, tighter response, then you're going to need to pay a little bit extra for that. So that's what you have here. And again, ultimately they have, for another $300, their 15-inch subwoofer here. So yeah, just keep in mind, Rythmik, they're not necessarily at the tippy top of the performance to dollar price point, but the trade-off for that is that you get some sort of better characteristics that you might want if you're going for more for like a 50-50 music and home theater rig there. So yeah, once you get into this price points beyond this, this is kind of these roughly $800 to $1,000 subwoofers. These are good enough for the vast majority of homes, like 99% of residential home theaters. Putting two of these in a room, this will cover output for a 4,000 cubic foot room. That is massive. That is like most people, like, if they have a basement home theater, two of these are going to be more than they'll ever need. However, once you get beyond this price point, now you get into, you could buy one of two things. You could either buy, output for a much larger room. Say you have, 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 cubic foot rooms, which are absolutely massive for, residential home theaters. Or you want to start digging below 20 hertz. So 20 hertz is like generally accepted as like the lowest bass that people can actually hear. And then once you go significantly below that, you get into like bass that like people will feel rather than hear. So this is where you get into like the chest slam area, like, the floor rumbling underneath you, that kind of stuff. So that's not necessarily something everyone wants to pursue. And it's also something you need to keep in mind that it becomes exponentially more expensive to pursue that if you do. So keep in mind, you're diverging two ways beyond this point. You're like, do I want deeper bass or do I want more output for a massive room? So in that spirit, this first option, this is going into the massive room area. There's actually two options here. These are from Power Sound Audio. You have the EV18F-M, and then you have the EV1513M. So the difference between these, this you can see, from the name, it's an 18-inch subwoofer, and then this is 15-inch. And then the EV models are, Power Sound Audio is like more, I'd say budget-oriented models, although nothing about Power Sound Audio is really budget. It's really like, compared to their, top of the line TV models, these are, relatively more affordable. And honestly, even for anything Power Sound Audio related, email support@powersoundaudio.com or call that number that you see over here. Tom is the owner and founder of Power Sound Audio. In his previous career, he was actually one of the founders of SVS and ran it for, several years before leaving to found Power Sound Audio. So when you call or email him, he's an incredibly knowledgeable guy, never tries to upsell you, gives you very straightforward advice. Like if you, explain to him what your situation is, what your room is, what you're looking to do, he'll give you very honest, straightforward recommendations about the type of subwoofers you need. He's not going to upsell you and get you something that's way more expensive and way more than you need. But at the same time, he will be very honest with you and say, like, if you're trying to do something for, $1,000, he's going to be straightforward. He's going to be like, yeah, I mean, I'm sorry, but like, that's just not something not a price point we play in. That's not something I can help you with. Go check out, Sue Research for subwoofers. Actually, I've literally heard him tell that to people before, that like, hey, there's these other brands. They do great products at lower price points. So that's just not what we do. So, definitely check with him. The main difference between these, you can see this is obviously larger and this is smaller. So why is the smaller one the same price as the larger one? They're both $1,450. The difference, as you can see, they're both EV models. This one, the F in there means that it has a ferrite magnet in its woofer, whereas this one doesn't have the F. That means it has a neodymium magnet in the motor. They're calling it a neo motor woofer. But basically, it's largely agreed that neodymium woofers are better than ferrite woofers. And if I were to dig into the output, I'm sure this is actually, being a much smaller size than the 15-inch. Look up the dimensions, actually, if you can. The unbox dimensions, 22 by 24 by 20, and this is, 24 by 17 by 24. So, honestly, the dimensions are not too far off from each other, but I think the 15, it's a bit smaller, but you still get the same amount of performance, almost the same, really, as the larger one. So, it's really pick your poison there. I suspect that the 18-inch, it has more output just from the sheer displacement, and then the 15-inch may dig a little bit deeper, but we're splitting hairs here. This is something that if you consult with Tom, he'll tell you the difference between the two and recommend which one to get you. In my opinion, either one is good, so just get whichever one is in stock, whichever one, meets, well, they're both the same price, so whichever one is in stock and whichever one you just like the dimensions of more and will fit into your space better. That's really all it is. At $1,500, these are, two of the best options. And the other option I would really take a look at in this price point. Again, this is the issue with Rythmik. Love Rythmik subs. I actually personally own, a couple of them. Not this exact model. I actually have sealed subwoofers, which we can get to in a moment. But these Rythmik subwoofers, the FV15HP2 is actually the one I want to recommend to you guys. The HP2 has the larger amplifier. You can see the price is steep. It's almost $2,000. It's, $1,930. So you are getting the same amount of output as this Power Sound Audio subwoofer. You are paying $500 more for that. What are you getting for that extra $500? What you're getting is that direct drive servo woofer. It has, a bit more accurate and tighter bass response to it. And you do pay a decent premium for that, so just keep that in mind. Again, two of these subwoofers, or two of the Power Sound Audio subwoofers, perfectly good for 4,000 cubic foot room. You could push it out to like 5,000 cubic feet, but at that point you're really trying to manage certain trade-offs there. For example, this Rythmik subwoofer here, if you look at the specs, they claim anechoic response down to 12 hertz in your room, versus this Power Sound Audio, they're claiming down to 12 hertz. So this is true for both of them to varying extents. But then you need to make a decision whether you can EQ them in a way that you get either a ton of mid-bass output in that 40-50 hertz range, and then you kind of roll this subwoofer off sooner at around 15 to 20 hertz, in the upper teens area, or you can choose to dig really deep. You can EQ both of these subwoofers to go flat down to 12 hertz, but then you'll be giving up some of that mid-bass output. So it's really a matter of what you want to do there. As I said, you're converging into two separate price points, two separate paths once you get into this price points of $1,500 and above. So the other option, once you're getting above $2,000, I mentioned before, the EV subwoofers are Power Sound Audio's more affordable options. The TV subwoofers are Power Sound Audio's, premium options. So you have the TV 1813, and this one now, unlike the cheaper options, when these have an M at the end for Power Sound Audio, such as these two, they have an M. That means that they have the cheaper matte finish, and they were manufactured in China. The ones without the M at the end, they have the more premium satin finish, and they were manufactured in the United States. So you do pay a premium for that as well, but all around the TV subwoofer, it's definitely much more capable. As you can see, this has the neodymium magnet in the motor, in the woofer. It no longer has the cheaper ferrite magnet, and you can see its in-room extension. They're claiming single digits here. Obviously, the thing is with the in-room extension is the larger the room you have, the closer you'll get to the anechoic response. The smaller the room is, the deeper it'll dig. You have more boundary reinforcement, you have more room gain, and you can have the subwoofer dig a lot deeper. So the truth lies somewhere in between. Like if you have a 5,000, 6,000 cubic foot room, you're only really going to get down to 14 hertz. If you're putting one of these bad boys in like a 2,000 cubic foot room, you're going to get that 9 hertz extension. Yeah, I think that's a picture of Tom down there, working on his subwoofers. So these are all, hand built and made in Ohio in the United States, likely by Tom, maybe by one of his guys who works for him. But yeah, you're getting a much higher quality, both in terms of build quality, component quality, and just overall performance than you are with the cheaper power sound audio products. And then top of the line this isn't top of the line. They have dual woofer products, but I'll get to that in a minute. This is really the most expensive subwoofer I'd realistically consider buying from Power Sound Audio, and that's the TV21 IPAL. This is the M model. I think they have a non-M as well, but basically, you're getting to $3,300 at this price point. You're getting their best woofer, their 21-inch IPAL woofer. And as you can see, anechoic response is down to 12 hertz. In-room response is down into single digits. And again, this is where you have to choose. Do you want more output? Do you want to put this in a 7,000 cubic foot room? 2 of them in a 7,000 cubic foot room and just get like monstrous output above 20 hertz and really hit that reference level pressurization? Or do you want linear output down to single digits, down to 8, 9 hertz? And if you're going to do that second option, it's going to have to be in a smaller room. You're going to need to put 2 of these in like a 4,000 cubic foot room, and then you'll probably get linear response down to about 10 hertz. So, Power Sound Audio, they do sell higher end models than this. There's a couple more. There's dual woofer models. But really, with any of these companies, generally their cheapest model and their most expensive models are usually not worth it. It's usually the mid-range models that they do their best work at, and that's definitely true with Power Sound Audio in my experience. Not to say that they're top of the line, like they do have a dual woofer 21-inch subwoofer, but actually once you get into that price point, that $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 price point, I would actually recommend a different company instead, and that company is JTR. So this is another, American owned and operated, hand built in the USA subwoofer. So JTR, this is really where we top out at home theater, in my opinion, because at this price point, what you would do really is you wouldn't buy better subwoofers than these. Arguably, there aren't very many options that are significantly better. You would just buy more of these. So if you have a room that is much larger and needs much more output, you would buy more JTR subwoofers. You wouldn't buy bigger subwoofers, so to speak. And in here, there's really only 2 options I'd recommend. The first is a sealed option. That's the JTR Captivator RS2. It uses 2 18-inch subwoofers inside of a sealed cabinet. And you might be asking, like, hey, we were just looking at a 21-inch subwoofer before. What are you doing going back down to 18? The thing is, not all subwoofers of a particular driver size are the same. There's a lot of work that can be done in the subwoofer driver design, as well as in the plate amp, the DSP, the cabinet design, that makes 2 subwoofers of the same quote-unquote size very, very different in performance. So this 18-inch subwoofer is actually, the 18-inch driver, in the subwoofer, it actually performs as good or better than the vast majority of 21-inch drivers out there. And I'm sure Tom from Power Sound Audio will disagree with me here, and he's free to do so. But I personally think that the 18-inch driver in this JTR subwoofer, from what I've seen, has output and transient response and time domain performance that is superior to Power Sound Audio's 21-inch driver. I actually haven't tested their IPAL driver, so it's their older 21-inch driver I'm comparing this against. But largely I've found it to be true that this isn't really even, strictly related to Power Sound Audio, or it's to really everyone in the industry. Most 21-inch drivers are going to lose out to this 18-inch JTR driver. And that's totally fine. As you can see, you're paying for this. This is a $4,800 subwoofer. But what you're getting for that is you're getting true extension down to 10 hertz. You're getting a sealed subwoofer. It's going to be a lot cleaner, a lot more precise and tighter than ported subwoofers are. The reason I didn't recommend sealed subwoofers at the price points below this is because with sealed subwoofers, you lose a ton of output compared to ported. Literally, in a comparable price point at lower price points, a $500 sealed subwoofer will literally be a quarter of the output of a, $500 ported subwoofer. And that just comes down to the fact that there's a 12 decibel difference in output sometimes at 20 hertz between the two. So it's a bit unfortunate that that's the way it is at lower price points. But once you get into this premium tier, sealed is really the only way to go, in my opinion. Unless you have just like an absolutely gargantuan room, like 10,000 cubic feet, then yeah, you're going to need to go ported. There's no other way to get that amount of output. But like, say you have a 5,000, 6,000 cubic foot room, just put multiples of this RS2, like just put one in each corner of the room and you're all set. And the only other subwoofer I'd recommend that's more expensive than this is JTR's ported version. So really, these use the same plate amplifier, the same drivers, the same 4,000 watt speaker power amp, the same 18-inch drivers, 2 of them. It's just that this one is a lot bigger and it's ported. So for the ported subwoofer, you lose some deep low-end extension. Like this isn't going to get you below 10 hertz, whereas like, this RS2, it can get down to, 8, 7 hertz. This, for a ULF 4000, it's going to unload below about 12 hertz. Like you're not going to get super, super deep bass, but it's going to have way, way more output at anything above 20 hertz. Just absurd how much of an advantage the ported subwoofer has over sealed, even at this price point. It's just that, most people, they're not going to need this gargantuan amount of output unless you have a massive room. So, once you get above this price, and this is $5,000 for the subwoofer, admittedly, that's not cheap, but like say you have like $10, $20, $30,000 to spend on subwoofers, I just wouldn't get single subwoofers that are more expensive than this, because honestly, the ones I've seen, the 21 inchers, the 24 inchers, they just aren't meaningfully better than this. Like I'd rather have 2 of these or 3 of these or 4 of these than having one 24-inch subwoofer, because the 24 incher, it has like, 2, 3, 4 dB more output at certain frequency ranges. That's nothing. Like, I mean, that's not nothing, but like, if you're talking about a subwoofer that's like 3 or 4 times the price of this, that is nothing, because you'd want this in every way. This is better having, 2 or 3 or 4 of these subwoofers rather than having a subwoofer that's 2 or 3 or 4 times more expensive. So really, this is where it tops out, $5,000. There are infinitesimally small scenarios, super edge cases, where you want a subwoofer that's more expensive than this, but for most people, it's not a realistic concern. So yeah, those are pretty much all the subwoofers I would recommend between $150 all the way to $5,000. And just to recap, as I said before, every room will benefit from at least having 2 subwoofers in it, but most people should just spend the most they can on the single best subwoofer they can afford and then buy a second one down the road. Buying 2 subwoofers up front doesn't really work out for you most of the time unless you have a really big budget or a really small room. And as always, just want to continue on by saying that if you need to ever consult with me on a specific home theater choices or subwoofers, feel free to email me at the link below, at the email below, and like and subscribe. Thank you very much. Bye.